path is the path of first one is the path of accumulation, wherein the practitioner has to accumulate a lot of merit. So the path begins with the person having cultivated bodhicitta in his mind stream, generated bodhicitta in his mind stream. So this is for a Mahayana practitioner. For a lesser vehicle practitioner, the paths begin by the cultivation of what is called renunciation, spontaneous renunciation in one's mind stream. So one works on the path of accumulation, and then one realizes the wisdom of emptiness, initially conceptually, and then later on it's followed by a direct realization of emptiness. So when there is a conceptual realization of the wisdom of emptiness, that is at that stage, the person is said to be on what is called the path of preparation. So the first one is path of accumulation, Sambhar Marg. The second one is Prayog Marg, the path of preparation. And then the third one is the path where you have a direct realization of the ultimate mode of existence of all phenomena. So you have a direct perception, direct realization of all phenomena, the direct realization of the emptiness nature of all phenomena. So that is the third path, the path of seeing, or darshan marg. And then you proceed to eliminate all the obscurations, the afflictive obscurations, and the cognitive obscurations in your mind stream gradually. So once you've, when you are in the process of eliminating, abandoning these obscurations, so you start off with the more gross ones first, and then progressively kind of eliminate the grosser ones, and then the subtler ones. So that happens on what is called the path of meditation, or the bhavana marg. And then after all the afflictive obscurations and the cognitive obscurations have been cleared away from your mind stream, you attain the state of completion, complete Buddhahood. So that is what is called the path of no more learning, or aseksha marg. So one needs to kind of cultivate the causes to advance, to cultivate, establish all these paths in one's continuum. And on the basis of these causes, then you attain the state of Buddhahood, which is characterized by all these different kinds of fearlessnesses and different kinds of realizations, powers. So all these paths, in turn, are rooted in the practice of discipline, or Shila. They're rooted in the practice of the mind of enlightenment, cultivation of the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta. They require you to cultivate wisdom of both impermanence and emptiness. They require you to advance your skillful means, training in skillful means. They require you to cultivate conscientiousness and other superior mental states. So where the verse says, when you encounter the causes of happiness, in these always persevere. So if you have encountered, you've got the good fortune of understanding these causes of happiness, and also have the good fortune of being connected with somebody who can explain these causes of happiness, then it's up to you to persevere, not to be dejected, not to kind of give up with the slightest obstacle that you encounter. Now you've set a good goal for yourself, that you want to attain the state of enlightenment, and then you understand that these are the 5 different paths, and these are the different kinds of causes that you need to cultivate in order to attain that state of enlightenment. But just because you have your sights kind of trained on this noble goal doesn't mean that your path will be free of obstacles. So you need to kind of have genuine kind of resolve, firm resolve to persevere on this path. So to try and ride over any kind of obstacles that would impede your progress on this through these different stages, different kinds of paths to attain the state of enlightenment. So when you encounter the causes of happiness, and we have the causes of happiness right now because we got this human form, which is quite rare. And then not just that, we are also blessed with all kinds of freedoms and endowments in the form of being connected with the doctrine, in the form of having access to Sangha who can explain the teachings. Uh, you know, we have all kinds of favorable conditions to advance on the spiritual path. So we need to recognize that and stick with actions that would lead to genuine happiness, not just some fleeting temporary kind of pleasures, but genuine well-being, genuine happiness, which is rooted in virtue and wisdom. So how does this true happiness come about? It comes through the practice of ethical conduct, Shila. It comes through the practice of concentration, Samadhi. It comes through cultivating insights through the practice of Vipassana, which leads to Prajna or wisdom. And then all the other practices of generosity, patience, perseverance, um, then compassion, meditative stabilization. So all these other practices also need to be, worked on. You need to cultivate all these other practices also. So these are the causes of happiness. So identify what is true happiness and identify what are the causes of these happiness. And then you need to persevere. You need to kind of stay focused on that. So in these, always persevere. So don't abandon any kind of good habits that you've cultivated. You have some understanding of your spiritual goal. You know what can take you to that spiritual goal, help you attain that spiritual goal. So you've cultivated some sort of a spiritual practice, some sort of a spiritual routine. You engage in wholesome actions, but every now and then you may encounter some sort of an obstacle. If it becomes difficult, if your routine is challenged in some form, then you should not give up. You should persevere. Yeah. So whichever task you take up first, address this task primarily. So the verse is also kind of imploring us to cultivate a practice of mindfulness in a way. Yeah. So stay focused. Be mindful about your spiritual goals. Be mindful about the spiritual practices that will help you attain those spiritual goals. Do not let your mind scatter into all kinds of excessive thoughts, in all kinds of unrelated practices. So concentrate entirely on your aspiration, whatever aspiration you think is the supreme aspiration for yourself, and then conduct your practice accordingly. So stay kind of focused, stay single pointed on your path. If you have too many aspirations, then you lose the actual purpose. So do not initiate multiple tasks. Do not initiate too many tasks. Be single pointed in your decision. So you've identified what is the true happiness and what are the causes of that true happiness and how one needs to accumulate those causes. Stay focused on that. So this verse kind of encourages mindfulness, helps us, or rather implores us to cultivate our practice of mindfulness. So in our daily practice, in our daily life, we kind of need to reflect this advice. So you shouldn't jump from one task to another restlessly. We should see through whatever task we've initiated, and that the completion of that task. So what happens is if you stayed focused on whatever task you've identified as being the supreme, the most important task, uh, you've kind of identified as a priority task, uh, then you deploy mindfulness to make sure that you stay focused on that task. And with that, your mindfulness get enhanced. And with that enhanced mindfulness, if there are other pending tasks, those would also be then, it would be easier for you to accomplish those other tasks also. Otherwise, if you're constantly kind of hopping from one task to the other, then you would not realize the priority task, of course, accomplish the priority task, and the other task also would be compromised. So in this way, you ensure the success of both tasks, where otherwise you accomplish neither. So when we multitask or you act without, mindful focus, without focus, we often fail to complete even one task properly. But by handling one task well, by deploying heightened mindfulness, heightened mindful focus, we create the mental clarity and capacity, which will then help us complete the next task also. So this is both a practical advice and a metaphor for spiritual progress. So don't scatter your spiritual reserves, your spiritual energies. So stick to your daily commitments, do your meditation, do your study, practice compassion in action, and stay focused. Enhance your capacity of mindfulness. So avoid the mind's tendency to chase distractions. And we are prone to these kind of distractions because our mind is not clear of afflictions. So we would chase all kinds of distractions. And then the priority tasks are not handled, and the other tasks also would get compromised. So Lama Atisha is through this verse, he's asking us to persevere in what brings true happiness. So we need to understand what true happiness is first, and we need to understand what are the causes of that true happiness, and then persevere to accumulate those causes. And then be disciplined in our actions, have mindfulness, cultivate mindful focus on what we start. And through this kind of mindful perseverance, not only are we able to handle the priority tasks, but even other related mundane tasks would also be properly handled. And we can then ensure that even those mundane tasks become part of our practice, part of our path to awakening. So this is the verse number 12. Essentially, it's talking about how to cultivate perseverance and focus. It's asking us to understand how we can, what is this place of happiness? How, when it says when you encounter the causes of happiness, we need to understand what is this place of happiness that is being referred to and what are the causes of that happiness. And then cultivate mindful perseverance to ensure that we accomplish our priority tasks and other tasks also on the path to attaining this place of genuine happiness. Okay, what is the next verse? So the next verse number 13. Since you take no pleasure in negative deeds, when a thought of self-importance arises, and at that instant deflate your pride and recall your teacher's instructions. Let me just turn on the light, maybe some light. Okay, I'm not sure whether I'm visible now. Okay.
Oh, it's much better.
Okay.
Much better,
Yeah.
much better.
Okay. Okay, since you take no pleasure in negative deeds, when a thought of self-importance arises, at that instant, deflate your pride and recall your teacher's instructions. So we've identified what this place of happiness is and what are the causes that lead to this place of happiness, genuine happiness. And in order to attain that genuine happiness, one needs to refrain from engagement with any kind of unwholesome actions. So you take no pleasure in negative deeds. So you kind of have constructed some sort of a spiritual practice routine for yourself. And you see yourself as some sort of a spiritual person. And it's possible that that leads to an attitude of pride, as in you deem yourself to be a little more superior to others. So if such thoughts of self-importance arise, then one needs to kind of instantly make oneself aware of this pride that arises, this inflation of mind that arises in our continuum, and recall all the spiritual instructions that we have received to help us in handling this pride. And then there's this verse is followed by another verse which talks about the opposite of this mental state. So it talks about a mental state where we feel discouraged. So the verse number 14, when discouraged thoughts arise, uplift your mind and meditate on the emptiness of both. So there's an inflation of mind that could occur, and there could be a deflation of mind that could occur. And how does it happen? And how does one deal with these different mental states? So this is what verse number 13 and part of verse number 14 are about. So let's take the first verse. So these verses, I'll just also talk about the main point that is being highlighted through these verses. It's actually asking us to enhance our practice of cultivating equanimity, developing equanimity in the light of dissipative mental states which are in the form of excitation or laxity that could arise in our mental continuum. So if one is excessively dismayed or discouraged, disappointed, the mind kind of gets depressed, and that could lead to laxity in one's mental continuum. If one generates this feeling of superiority, then it leads to some kind of excitation in your mental continuum. So you need to kind of cultivate a state which is equanimous. Yeah, it is free of these extremes of excitation and laxity. And the verse number 12 that we saw, it speaks about cultivating mindfulness. In order for you to, cultivate proper mindfulness, you need to ensure that your mind is free of any kind of excitation and laxity. So this verse is kind of alluding to that practice. Yeah. So it, of course, talks about, external excitement, which is caused by this feeling of self-importance. And it also talks about this external disappointment when one encounters different kinds of suffering. But that internally is reflected in the form of excitation and laxity, and that compromises one's practice of mindfulness. So how does one cultivate equanimity free of excitation and laxity? This is what these verses are about. So let's take verse number 13 first. Since you take no pleasure in negative deeds, when a thought of self-importance arises at that instant, deflate your pride and recall your teacher's instructions. So since you take no pleasure in negative deeds, this kind of affirms our goal. It affirms our spiritual aspiration, which is to turn away from any kind of unwholesome actions, because we know that unwholesome actions leads to negative karma, which could bring suffering in the future, which compromises our happiness in the future. So one already aspires to avoid any kind of negative behavior, and we do not delight in any kind of negative behavior, especially in the form of bringing harm to others and to oneself. So there's some sort of a ethical boundary perimeter that we've identified, which will prevent us from, engaging any kind of unwholesome actions. So you reject wrongdoing, you reject any kind of unwholesome actions. So when any unwholesome action, mental state like conceit or this attitude of self-importance arises, then it clashes with this boundary, this ethical boundary, this ethical perimeter that we've set for ourselves. So So when we take no pleasure in negative deeds, then we've identified this ethical perimeter, ethical baseline, and then we're able to identify these mental states like self-importance or pride or conceit uh, as something that could compromise or transgress that ethical perimeter that we have set for ourselves. So we take no pleasure in negative deeds, and when a thought of self-importance arises, so we how does this thought of self-importance arise generally? Uh, so we take no pleasure in negative deeds, and we know that negative deeds lead to negative karma, which is the cause of suffering. But what is the root of this suffering? So the root of this suffering is uh, conceiving the aggregates as a self. So we have this physical and mental aggregates. So the physical form is the physical aggregate, and then there are the mental aggregates. So there's feeling, there's discrimination, there's consciousness, and the rest of the non-associated compositional factors. So there are the mental aggregates and the physical aggregates on the basis of which, or these are the basis for us to kind of impute or designate a self. But instead of using these as a basis for designation of self, we actually equate these aggregates with the self. So this conception of self is erroneous, and this is what leads to these negative deeds, which in turn creates negative karma and then leads to suffering. So this conceived self also, if you look at the nature of this conceived self, it wants to be superior. It wants oneself to be superior, the self to be superior, and others to be inferior. So inherently, there's this tendency for uh, us to see this conceived self as being superior in relation to others. So there's an inherent tendency for us to engage, or rather manifest an attitude of self-importance or conceit. And then there is an attachment for all those things and all those people that serve this goal, which is, furthering the welfare of this conceived self. And then there is aversion to all those things and all those people who prevent us from uh, no, establishing this conceived self as superior in relation to others. So this sense of superiority that we have is a big flaw. It's a flaw that we cling on to, and it is actually an object of abandonment. But instead, we keep clinging on to it, and we keep kind of reinforcing and enhancing it. So this grasping at the conceived self and the subsequent conceptualizations that we make in relation to this conceived self, in the form of attachment to those things and people that serve the purpose or the serve this conceived self, and aversion to those things and people who work against this conceived self. These conceptualizations and the grasping at the conceived self are our enemy. So we need to identify this as our enemy, and then we need to uh, observe where the base of this conceived self is, and then analyze the properties of this conceived self, examine its past, examine its future, and so on, and seek where it goes to and where it comes from. So you do all this analysis, uh, probe into the nature of this conceived self, and then there will be a point where you'll realize that when you search for this, an essence of this conceived self, you'll find that it's not there, it does not exist. So this self exists only imputedly, but instead, our tendency is to equate it with the aggregates, and we kind of grasp at an essential self. But when we search for it, when we analyze its properties, when we observe at its base, when we examine its past, future, and so on, we do not find it. So this non-findability of the conceived self, when searched, that is its ultimate reality. So these are all the spiritual teachings that will need to invoke when the thoughts of self-importance arises. So since both the self, so the self itself does not have any kind of a defining essence. Similarly, others also do not have any kind of defining essence. So self is not inherently established, it is not inherently born. Others are also not inherently established, they are not inherently born. So this lack of essence, this lack of inherent abiding and inherent birth, it is kind of equal for both self and others. So we need to realize this nature of both self and others, and then let go of this notion of self-importance that we have. And then discard this self-importance totally. So take no pleasure in negative deeds, and when a thought of self-importance arises, at that instant, deflate your pride. How do you deflate your pride? You deflate your pride by recollecting these spiritual instructions, all these instructions that we just looked at. So when a thought of self-importance arises, at that instant, deflate your pride. So self-importance refers to this attitude of equating self with the aggregates. It refers to some sort of an egoistic pride. And then the affiliated afflictions of arrogance, conceit, which essentially think that I am in some way better, or I am in some way more important or more superior relative to others. So the advice here is to not let this kind of conceit take root, not let this conceit solidify or grow. So at the instant it manifests in your mind stream, at that very instant, intervene before the seeds of that pride, before the seeds of that attitude of self-importance, uh, takes hold and then does more damage and harm to you in the future. At that very instant, use mindfulness and vigilance to become aware of this, the arising of this attitude of self-importance, arising of conceit in our mental continuum, and then deflate it using all the spiritual instructions that we just spoke of. So deflate your pride is referring to some skillful means, letting go of this conceived self. Think about self as being an imputed, designated, dependent, conditioned kind of phenomena, not an essential, independent, autonomous kind of phenomena. And then you could use
Venerable, could I ask a question?
Yeah.
So you said that self-importance can show itself as arrogance and thinking yourself superior to others.
Yes.
Can it also show as thinking yourself as inferior to others, as I am a nobody, I am maybe a victim, I'm a would that also be a way of...
Yeah, this self-grasping actually manifests both ways. It could lead to this heightened sense of superiority, and it could also lead to heightened deflation. Yeah, and that is what the next verse is about. But both these attitudes...
But in that 8 verses of mind training, the second verse says, and when I'm in the company of others, may I see myself as inferior to all, and from the depths of my heart, cherish others as supreme. So isn't that practicing the opposite of the, like, isn't that also a form of self-importance to say that I'm, you know, inferior? Shouldn't we instead be saying that we are all equal or something like that?
Well, equality, of course, we kind of contemplate equality between self and others, but the equality is in the is in the form of understanding that whether it's the self or the others, both are conditioned phenomena, both kind of lack an essence. Uh, the verse that you're referring to um, is a very important mind training kind of you know technique where you prevent any kind of pride arising in your mental continuum. And one way to ensure that, pride is a negative, it's a destructive kind of affliction. Um, so uh, it's a manifestation of this practice of other cherishing that you need to focus on. So if you kind of uh, see others, you're not sure anyways whether the other person at what state of spiritual realization the other person is. Yeah. um, so the best way for you to do to engage in a perfect other cherishing practice is to look upon them as maybe even bodhisattvas, look at them maybe as arhants, no, who are advanced. And that would automatically kind of curtail any instincts that you have uh, that could be triggered and then manifest as either some sort of disrespect towards them, which would lead to, as you know, or maybe anger towards them, and that would lead to the wiping off of a lot of your merit that you could have accumulated in the past. So the best way in those situations is to kind of look upon yourself as uh, yeah, being uh, you're right. I mean, if you say inferior, it kind of has a negative connotation. But when you look upon them as bodhisattvas who are kind of on a higher level of realization, who've kind of practiced the paths and attained the higher states, higher grounds, then in relation to their practice, our practice is still at the level of a novice. So if you uh, engage in that kind of an attitude, if you cultivate that kind of an attitude, then it prevents you from manifesting any kind of pride, manifesting any kind of anger in relation to those uh, others, other beings. Yeah. So I think that verse needs to be understood more in the context of how one needs to enhance one's practice of other cherishing. Yeah. But self-importance, looking upon yourself as um inferior to others, why do you say that it is an aspect of self-importance?
Because it seems like two sides of the same coin, right? Either
Mhm.
I am superior, I have this pride, or I have low self-esteem. Both of them are, I would think, negative attitudes, right? Of course, you should not have pride, but you
No,
should also not have low
no,
self-esteem, because
of course
that
not.
has its own
Yeah. No, I don't think it's talking about having a low self-esteem. In fact, when we talk about the practices of a bodhisattva, you're supposed to kind of cultivate fortitude, you're supposed to cultivate perseverance, and all that is rooted in fact, the next verse kind of talks about what you're referring to. So let's just go through that verse first and then see if some part of your question is answered there. So the next verse says, when discouraged thoughts arise. So this is probably what you're talking about. Discouraged thoughts in the form of, which would manifest in the form of low self-esteem. If that arises, then uplift your mind and meditate on the emptiness of both. So, when is it likely that discouraged thoughts arise in our mind stream? So, when discouraged thoughts arise, so this recognizes um, you know, common human experiences where we feel some sense of discouragement, or we kind of experience some sort of despair or loss of confidence. So what you're saying, low self-esteem, or you kind of feel a little depressed. Uh, Maybe you kind of identify yourself with some sort of failure, and you have the sense of failure, or being a failure. So when such kind of discouraged thoughts arise, uh, usually these thoughts arise from us being frustrated, and frustrated in a very specific manner, frustrated in our pursuit of what is called the eight worldly concerns. So we have this very enhanced, inflated opinion of ourselves. Uh, and based on that opinion of ourselves, uh, we constantly craving uh, all kinds of, good things for that self. So there's profit that we desire for ourselves. There's pleasure that we desire for this self. There's fame that we desire for this self. There's praise that we desire for this self. And the opposites of these, we have some sort of an aversion and we want to prevent, which is uh, loss, pain, ill fame, or disrepute, and then criticism. So, if we are frustrated in our pursuit of these eight worldly concerns, we have this notion of self, and this self we want to be serviced by acquisition of these eight worldly concerns, or engagement with these eight worldly concerns. Then that is when we feel a sense of discouragement. That is when we feel a sense of despair. So, we feel that we are not progressing well enough, we are not progressing fast enough. We kind of get overwhelmed by any kind of karmic obstacles. If we kind of fall sick very often, we kind of feel overwhelmed by these karmic obstacles, not trying to understand that it is actually because of the seeds that you've sown. It's the effect of those very seeds that you're experiencing in the form of these obstacles. Or you could feel discouragement or shame from past actions, some transgressions or unwholesome actions that you've committed in the past. Or you'd feel discouragement because of the general suffering that you experience in samsara. So when these kinds of sufferings are encountered, that is when we feel discouraged. We feel kind of a sense of despair. We have this loss of confidence. We feel this. We have this sense of low esteem. So it's when these thoughts arise, what are we supposed to do? We're not advised to suppress these thoughts. What we need to do is we need to start off by start off dealing with these discouraging thoughts by being aware of them, and then realizing that this discouragement is not a permanent state. It's not a failure. It's just another mental formation, a transient mental formation that we can deal with proper wisdom. So if your mind becomes too dejected, then through the experience of these obstacles maybe, or being frustrated in your pursuit of the eight worldly concerns, then what should one do to illuminate the mind, to kind of cheer it up, jeer it up a little bit? So fall back on your understanding of the precious human rebirth. So one instruction, specific instruction. So realize that you are reborn as a human, but there are infinite other sentient beings who don't have the good fortune of being reborn as humans. There are a multitude of animals which experience all kinds of suffering. they have all kinds of disadvantages. And there are beings in other uh, realms also. So realize how the attainment of this human life, that very fact is very joyful. And then realize how we can use all the freedoms and the endowments that our present life gives us, provides us, to attain higher spiritual goals. And then realize how joyful it is that such things can be attained, such things are possible for me. So, invoke all these spiritual teachings, these spiritual instructions to deal with these discouraged thoughts, to uplift your mind. And then on what basis does this dejection arise? As we just saw, it arises mostly through when we encounter conditions for negativity. And these conditions could be mostly created by others. So mostly created by others, and they are kind of uh, impeding our acquisition of the eight worldly concerns or pursuit of the eight worldly concerns. They're creating obstacles in our pursuit of the eight worldly concerns. So these, once you cultivate proper awareness of these uh, conditions for negativity, and you cultivate proper wisdom around these conditions of negativity, then you can, deal with these discouraged thoughts. See, adversity, the other thing that one needs to understand is that adversity, different kinds of adversity, for example, sickness, for example. Now, these are all great tools for us to clear away our negative karma and defilements. So when we when we encounter any kind of adversity, that adversity is a condition, it's a cause that could motivate us to perform spiritual practice. Without any kind of adversity, I mean, you look around yourself with people who appear to be kind of surrounded by favorable conditions all the time. They don't seem to have any kind of incentive to engage in spiritual practice. Look at your own experience. We've also gone through periods were when we had the best of conditions, favorable conditions. We were experiencing a lot of worldly pleasure and happiness. In those moments, we do not have any kind of incentive to conduct spiritual practice. So these adversities that we experience should be looked upon as conditions that could motivate us to perform spiritual practice. They compel us to engage in dharma practice. Uh, so they also kind of make us realize that, or if you kind of give it enough thought, these adversities kind of manifest because of conditions, because of seeds that you planted in the past. They do not just randomly manifest. These are the fruits. The adversity is a fruit or an effect of some negative karma or unwholesome action that you've engaged in the past. And then if one takes on the sickness, I mean, with this example, the sickness, even sickness, or that is a manifestation of some sort of a negative action that you've committed in the past. And then look at your own kind of life. We have these moments where we are free from these kind of obstacles and adversities, but then we've also experienced a lot of adversities. So what that tells us is that you have this conception of self, uh, uh, but this self uh, has had in the past also had to deal with all kinds of adversity, and in the future also it will have to deal with different kinds of adversities. So when you look at other people, uh, and you have this feeling of superiority in relation to the others because you've kind of attained more favorable conditions, remind yourself of the fact that these are transient, these are impermanent, and you can fall into a phase where there's a lot of adversity that you need to deal with, to face, to confront. And that automatically will kind of deflate the sense of self-importance or pride that is manifested in our mind streams. And on the other hand, if there's a sense of discouragement that has manifested, remind yourself of the fact that you're fortunate to have this human rebirth, which was caused by some very pure karma in the past. And also remind yourself of the fact that all this, the discouragement which has been caused by unfavorable conditions, by adverse conditions, these are all again transient. These are impermanent, and that itself will be, good enough for you to uplift your mind. So these are the instructions given in this verse number 13. And then the first part of verse number 14. So this verse also kind of talks about cultivating the practice of equanimity, equanimity that is free of excitation and mental laxity, in order to enhance your practice of concentration and mindfulness. So how does it do that? So what is excitement and laxity? So there are very specific kind of definitions for excitement and laxity in the Lamrim text. So excitement usually happens when you are in a meditation session and your mind is kind of gets scattered in the direction of objects that you crave for. So the affliction of attachment is what is driving this scattering. Scattering of mind can happen in relation to other afflictions also, but it is specifically in relation to the objects of attachment, objects of craving. When mind scatters in relation to the objects of craving, when distraction happens in relation to these objects of craving, that's when the mind is said to have manifested excitement. And then if it is dejected, the mind kind of shrinks, and then laxity kind of manifests in the mind stream. So both excitement and laxity compromises your practice of mindfulness. With mindfulness, what you want to do is you want to cultivate a state of single-pointed concentration, where whatever object of meditation you've identified, your mind stays focused on it. It remains non-forgetful about its object of meditation. Excitement kind of scatters it away, distracts it away towards some sort of an object of attachment. And laxity kind of leads to some sort of an internal shrinkage. So excitement kind of dilutes your ability to stay on the object of focus, your focal object. And laxity kind of reduces the intensity with which you engage with that object. So both this excitement and laxity need to be kind of addressed and regulated if you want to enhance your practice of mindfulness. So, there are different ways to deal with excitement and laxity. When excitement happens, or rather when laxity kind of manifests in one's mind stream, the meditator is asked to reflect on maybe a bright object, a bright light, or rather, when laxity manifests, that you use bright light as an object to help you, enhance the intensity of the mind, or maybe you use a bright statue to focus on, to enhance, to eliminate laxity. When scattering in the form of excitement happens, then you're kind of asked to meditate on impermanence of those objects of attachment. So you remind yourself of impermanent nature of those objects. Also, in the when you are trying to deal with excitement, you're asked to kind of visualize maybe a heavy kind of object, maybe a small heavy object, maybe a statue of a Buddha, um, made of a slightly heavier kind of metal. If you visualize that, then automatically the excitement in your mind stream, which is compromising your mindfulness, that is arrested. So there are these different kinds of techniques to deal with laxity and excitement. So uplift your mind is an instruction to actively shift your mental state when you are feeling dejected, when you're feeling discouraged, when you feel a sense of dismay. um, it does not kind of imply that you need to force some sort of cheerfulness onto yourself. All it means is that you need to reconnect with this genuine potential that you have in the form of uh, your ability to attain the state of a completely enlightened Buddha. So you have this Buddha nature in your mind stream. uh, every sentient being has that. And on top of that, now you got the favorable conditions to actualize that Buddha nature in the form of a human rebirth, in the form of this human intellect that you have. So reflect on these, and this will automatically help you uplift your mind. So these techniques to uplift your mind, these could be in the form of recalling the preciousness of human life, recalling the aspiration of the Bodhisattva path, reminding oneself about the Buddha nature that abides in one's continuum, and then reconnecting with the infinite compassion that motivates you to practice. So we have some cultivated some form of compassion in our mind streams, contrived it maybe at the moment, but it's genuinely very wholesome. So remind about all these wholesome mental states that we've been able to cultivate in our mind streams, and then those would automatically kind of help us uh, uplift our minds. So this is the second part, or the first part of verse number 14. And then it also talks about dealing with uh, this state of dejection by meditating on emptiness of both. So what is this both that is being referred to here? So the discouraging thought as well as the discouraged self, both these, the discouraging thought and the discouraged self, they are empty of true existence. So they do not have any kind of solid or independent existence. Both are dependently arising. Both are empty of inherent existence. Both are empty of autonomous existence. The discouraging thought as well as the discouraged self. The self in whose continuum the discouraging thought abides. Both these entities are empty of inherent existence. So when you meditate on this emptiness, the discouraging thought kind of loses its power. So you realize the lack of essence of the discouraging thought. You realize that it is conditioned. And when you realize that it is conditioned, you also probably realize that you may be playing a part in kind of exaggerating the discouraging nature of that thought. So then that thought loses its power to bind or define you. So what this does is it shifts your mind from identification with that adversity, identification with that suffering, and it kind of helps your mind kind of open up into some sort of a spacious, more open awareness. So this is what is being implied here when the verse says, meditate on the emptiness of both. Meditate on the emptiness of both the discouraged thought, the discouraging thought, and the discouraged self. So next verse is verse number, the second part of verse 14 and verse number 15. So here so we'll stop in maybe 5 minutes. We'll just go through this verse if possible. It's already 7 o'clock, so we'll pause in another 5 minutes. Okay, so verse number 14, the fourth and the fifth line of verse number 14. It says, when objects of attraction or aversion appear, view them as you would view illusions and apparitions. And verse number 15, it says, when you hear unpleasant words, view them as inert echoes. When injuries afflict your body, see them as the fruits of past deeds. So here, Lama Atisha is imploring us to look into the nature of those objects which we find attractive and those objects that we have an aversion towards, and see that they are in the nature of illusions. They are mere apparitions. And in what sense are these illusions and apparitions? We'll just look at it in a moment. And an extension of this same logic, a specific form of an object, a specific object of aversion is unpleasant words, critical words. So when you hear some critical words, you view them as some sort of an echo with any devoid of any kind of essence. It's just a reverberation actualized through some condition, external condition, or could be an internal condition. So what these internal or external conditions are, we'll look at that. So view them as you would view illusions and apparitions, the objects of attraction or aversion. So so what should we do when we have these objects of attachment, or distracted, when we are distracted by this object of attachment and aversion? We train in the manner of illusions and apparitions. So illusion is applied to a base material. There's some base material, and then you kind of use some incantation or some sort of an ointment or medicine, and then a person who is under the spell of that incantation has this experience of some illusion. Apparition is the portrayal of multiple things, diverse things, though being unreal. So there's nothing in reality, there's nothing there, but something appears there. There's a portrayal, there's an appearance. So that's the apparition. So all phenomena are tricks of illusion. So there's nothing that is substantially real. So reflect on the perfect equanimity of all phenomena in their resemblance to illusions. So you think about all phenomena being equal in the sense that they resemble illusions, they resemble mirages, they resemble dreams, they resemble echoes, or they resemble reflections in water, they resemble mirror reflections, mirror images, or conjurations. So invoke these kind of experiences, and then understand that what we deem to be real, things that we deem to be substantially real, are actually in reality merely illusory, are dreamlike, are in the nature of mirages, very similar to mirages. So think about all these examples. So how do these mirages and reflections, mirror images, conjurations, illusions, dreams, echoes come about? They come about through the play of certain conditions. So there are conditions that can impair our senses from within, and there are conditions that could impair the senses from without. So for example, when you speak about conditions that could impair the senses from within, you can think about your eyesight being compromised through cataracts, or maybe compromised through jaundice, in which case everything appears yellow to you. Or through cataracts, you have blurry images, so you could see like a dual image of something, where in fact it's just a single image. Because of your blurry vision, you have a slightly different kind of thing appearing to you, and then you grasp at that as being real. So these are examples of how conditions that impair the senses from within can affect how things appear to you. Yeah. Or if you take a hallucinogen, and then that then affects your vision. Things start appearing golden to you, or maybe some other color to you. Conditions that impair the senses from without are, for example, mirrors. So when you see a mirror reflection, it is because of the presence of a mirror. That reflection appears to you. It is an object of experience, but you know that that is not a real object. I mean, when you see your own reflection in the mirror, you know that it is not your real you. It is a reflection of you. So the mirror is kind of leading to causing this experience. Or when you hear an echo in a cave, it's the acoustics of the cave that is the external condition that is leading to that experience. Or when you are in a particularly arid area, uh, which is very hot in the summer, then the bright color sand or the pebbles at a distance, they, along with the sunlight that strikes them, then creates this uh, experience uh, of a pond or water at a distance. So that's the experience of a mirage. So all these experiences are coming through conditions that are impairing our senses from without. So all these experiences, whatever conditions, whether it is internal or external, they distort our senses. These conditions do not reside within the person. These are not inherent to our nature, uh, but they still become the cause for us to apprehend uh, phenomena like mirror images, echoes, mirages, and then we grasp at the mirage as real water, and that is where the problem starts. We don't realize that it's an apparition or an illusion, and then that if you put we hear of people who see these mirages and then start walking towards it when they're thirsty. So your actions are also kind of dictated by this, grasping at an appearance as reality, whereas in reality there's no water there, but you're grasping at that mirage, you're grasping uh, at water, you see water there. So all these experiences, um, so when you encounter objects of attachment and aversion, you need to look at them as illusions and apparitions. And all these are objects of attachment and aversion are actually um, compounded things, or rather they've come together through the interplay of causes and conditions. The All these things could be within the realm of our experience, but all these examples that we spoke about, whether it's a mirage or an mirror reflection or reflection in water or an echo, uh, these essentially are talking about uh, impermanence and insubstantiality that describes the true nature of those things. Like we know from I mean, it doesn't take us great amount of analysis to realize that the mirror reflection is not real. The image, when you see yourself in the mirror, you know that it is not your real you, but it's just a reflection of you. You don't need a lot of analysis to figure that out. uh, so so you realize the insubstantiality of that experience uh, without any kind of analysis. So you need to kind of extend that kind of understanding to other phenomena also, that we kind of grasp as being real. Even other experiences that we grasp as being real actually are similar uh, in the lack of substantiality. They are insubstantial, they're impermanent. Just like these experiences, the experience of a mirror reflection that we can easily understand as being insubstantial. So that is one thing that the verse is asking us to do. And then when injuries inflict our body, we need to kind of invoke our understanding of the law of karma and realize that whatever injuries have been inflicted on our body, on a physical person, are in fact the fruits of our past deeds, of our effects of our past actions. So all these objects of attraction or aversion, things that we like, we desire, or things that we dislike or fear, uh, should be seen in the nature of illusions, in this or apparitions, and even all these hateful words or unpleasant words that are directed towards us in the form of criticism, insults, or harsh speech. These need to be seen as echoes without any kind of substantial essence to them, mere reverberation. These need not kind of define us, they do not speak the truth. So, when you look at them as echoes, as mere echoes, then you automatically prevent yourself from reacting negatively to that, those negative words. Yeah. So you do not kind of mm, uh, you reduce the power of those critical words to shape your mind. You do not take those words then personally. You detach from taking them personally, because you see them as conditioned phenomena, and conditioned also in the sense that it could be because of the afflictions of the person who is directing those harsh words towards you. So there's uh, uh, you know uh, those words, you realize that they do not speak the truth about you, so you do not identify with them, and you do not uh, generate any kind of unwholesome reactive states uh, against those words. So an echo is a mere reverberation. It's just a sound that arises in response to something, and it does not have any substance of its own. So you invoke all these kind of reasonings to deal with harsh words, criticism, and physical suffering, injury, illness. You realize that it's inevitable in samsara, because you're born in samsara. You have this physical aggregate, which is the consequence, it's the effect of karma. And this physical person is in the nature of being fragile and prone to damage and harm. And that is the reality of this physical person. And that being the case, it is inevitable that you will experience some discomfort every now and then through physical suffering or injury or illness. So, see this physical suffering, injury, or illness as the ripened effects of karmic seeds that you planted in the past. And that will help us, deal with suffering. It will help us contextualize suffering. We'll realize that it arises due to causes and conditions, not just as some sort of a random, unconnected disaster. And it also builds responsibility. It helps us take responsibility for whatever suffering we are experiencing. Uh, we do not kind of forever blame others or the environment for whatever suffering experiences we have. It reduces our sense of victimhood. It fosters acceptance also. So these are the different ways which you can deal with when you confront an adverse situation in the form of physical injury, uh, injuries to your body. So this is the verse number 15. So we'll stop with verse number 15. Uh, Verse number 16 onwards, maybe Venerable Legden will cover in the next session. So, okay, we've run out of time. We'll just end with a short dedication. Um, so maybe just take a moment to reflect on whatever we've discussed today. Um, and just recollect the instructions. Uh, and through whatever reflection you've done on the instructions that we've discussed in the form of all these verses from the text by Lama Atisha, we've also accumulated some merit. So let's direct that merit. So due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all sentient beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel Bodhicitta that does not arise and grow And may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Okay, we'll stop here. Thank you all for
Thank you,
your time
Venerable.
and
Thank you.
Thank you
patience.
Thank you.
thank you for your teaching and your patience.
And sorry about the confusion about the time. I was under the impression that we were going to start at 6 o'clock. So, anyways, we kind of uh, lost about 15 minutes. That's okay. Okay, so see you next time then. Thank you. Enjoy your evening. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.